Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much, and you are so good to us. We pray, Father, that you would be with us today as we study your word. We pray that you would help us to take it into our hearts and that we would have in our lives. Pray for the service this afternoon as time comes. Pray that you would hear the words of you. In Jesus' name.
Amen. Okay, I want to start out finishing up with Masada, and I want to share with you this picture that we have back there. And when you look at that, you go, what in the world is this? Well, let me explain it. This right here is called Herodium. That is a man-made mountain by Herod. And guess where it's located? Bethlehem. Now, who was born in Bethlehem? Okay. It's God's sense of humor. The brain, now, we don't know if Herod was there when Jesus was born. We don't know that. But in God's sense of humor, I would bet my money that he was. That's just the way God is. The irony of it. You've got Herod, and I'll finish up with Herod today. You got Herod staying in his man-made palace. That is a man-made mountain. And you got Jesus born in a cave. The distance of these is a mile and a half. In fact, we were on top of Herodium. And did y'all go to Herodium?
Yes.
Okay. You go to the top of Herodium, look out, and you can almost spit on Bethlehem. That's how close it is. And if you look at Micah chapter 5, verse 2, it says, Bethlehem Ephrathah. That Ephrathah is a tribe name and all that. Basically, it's a subdivision of Bethlehem. So God is specific, that's specific on where Jesus was born. 2 on the world stage at the same time. And we don't ask why, but I'm going to show you why. And this all goes back to show who God is. Well, I want you to get the essence and God's irony and sense of humor. I'll bet you Herod was there when Jesus was born. Okay? All right. So much for that. Okay. You turn to Psalms 18. We're going to look at the rest of Herod and why does God have Herod and Jesus on the world stage at the same time. And I don't have my watch here to look at, so.
I'll be your watch.
Okay. So the essence with this is I want you to see the passion that's involved with Masada. I got a 12-minute video. I invited Ray, so he sent a video. Actually, I recorded it. And Herod and Masada, you look at Masada, you got to think of Herod, you got to think of the zealots and all that together. And if you have a better understanding of Herod, you'll have a better understanding of God. Because God put him on the stage, on the world stage at the same time. Okay. So in Psalms 18, got there at the bottom, I love thee, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my Masada and my deliverer. David was right there. And at the top one is 1 Samuel. Then he left them with the king of Moab, and they stayed with him all the time that David was at the stronghold. That's Masada. So there Masada is mentioned as a geographical location in 1 Samuel. And there it is mentioned as a metaphor, as a stronghold. So there's the passages in Psalms where Masada is mentioned, fortress. And those are ones I'm aware of. Okay? Now, All those psalms start out with chaos. David or the writer is in trouble. You know, my life is being threatened. And the writer goes in details on what's happening with him. God wants to know your details. God wants to know your details of the trouble that you're in. He already knows it. He wants you to know it. Okay. So, but all those psalms have contained in it in some way, shape, or fashion, the Lord is my rock, my fortress, my Messiah, and my deliverer. And we would do well to follow that pattern and declare what those writers of Psalms do. And it is also mentioned in a couple of times in the New Testament there. You've got the verses. Okay, there is the map showing where Masada is at versus Jerusalem. It's about 65 miles or so. There's a picture of Masada, and you can see the snake trail as it zigzags up. That's the path that Herod would take. That's Herod's path. Herod was an Olympian in his day. I believe it was horsemanship or something like that. So he was an Olympian. So he was a world-class athlete. Okay. In fact, if he didn't win, he'd probably kill you. But anyway, so you can see the cable lift, a little dark spot at the top and a little oasis there. And you see on the left side a little wadi, dry riverbed that floods every so often. And there's looking at Masada from the other side. My pen does not work, so I can't write on the screen like I did other. There you can see Masada, and you can see it's a very isolated mountain. It's not part of a range. It's an isolated mountain. Okay. Now, Herod and Jesus on the world stage at the same time, because that's the way God ordained it, predestined it. Okay, but when the fullness of time came, God sent His Son, born of a woman, born under the law. He might redeem those who were under the law, that we would be adopted as sons and daughters. So God says Jesus is coming this time. And we've got Herod on the world stage too. Okay? It's not a coincidence. So, you got to ask yourself the question, why? Why? When you understand why, you're going to get a bigger picture of who God is. Okay. Now, information, I'm not going to review the information from last time. It's too much. Thank you, Kenny, sitting there going, thank you. Okay, but I left up basically when Herod dies. Herod dies in the Yellow Gold. Herod dies in 2 BC, 4 BC, somewhere around in there. And once you get its concept, Herod was probably the richest man to ever live in perspective to his culture. Herod, his wealth was greater than Israel's GDP. Now, GDP is gross domestic product. Everything that you make, do, sell, buy, all that is put into the GDP. Herod's GDP was greater than his nation. Bring that forward to the United States. The United States GDP is $20 trillion. Okay, it's two with a whole bunch of zeros behind it. $20 trillion. Our national budget at the government is $4 trillion. Tax revenues are $3. So you go in debt in this country $1 trillion per year. Beside it. So, who's the richest person in the world now? You can, Bozo or whoever. He's worth about $400 billion. That does not compare to Herod, because Jeff Bezos does not have a greater wealth than the GDP of the United States. Herod, in retrospect, comparison-wise, was the richest man that's ever lived. And he's on the world stage with Jesus. And you probably never put those two together. That's why you got Sunday school. Okay? Not only is he the richest man in comparison, he's probably one of the most evil that has ever lived. When we think of evil, I think of Hitler. Hitler does not compare to Herod. Hitler killed more and all that, but Hitler did not kill his brothers or sisters and all that. He didn't do that. Herod did. So you've got this world-class evil darkness that's on the world, and then the light of the world comes on. Okay, so as interesting, you can find pictures of, statues and all that of Caesar and all that. There is only one coin that exists today. It's about as big as your fingernail. It has an image of Herod. Herod was very careful not to have images of himself because he didn't want to offend Caesar. Okay, so you got that. So when he dies, Rome takes over Masada, and they got the salt mine there. You got the Dead Sea, so you need salt, so they're doing all that there. You got all the food, the water, and all that, stored up there at Masada. 66 AD, revolt. And it was led by Eleazar ben Yair. Okay, he sees Masada. That was a safe haven for him. You're not going to get Masada. You can see what a fortress it is. Okay. 67 AD, Rome says, had enough. Done with it. We're done with you rebellious people. We had rebellions just a few years ago in like 47 AD. Not as bad, but this one was awful. Okay, I forgot my trip. Anyway. So the Roman guy that was leading the control of the rebellion on the Roman side, Vespasianus Flavius. He was adopted father of a guy by the name of Josephus. You remember that? Covered that at Dom. So Jerusalem fell, but Masada stood. He still got the rebels up there, the zealots up there. They're doing their thing, but they are isolated. So Nero dies, committed suicide. We all heard about Nero. Flavius goes to Rome thinking he's going to be Caesar. And he was the apparent heir to Caesar. There's a couple in between there, but they only ruled just a few months. But he was the main guy coming on board. Okay, he was a big crown Caesar. But then you had a person that says, no, you're not going to be Caesar. Masada still stands. You failed at Masada. Flavius goes, okay. He goes back to Masada and he starts the siege. And the siege lasts from 70 to 73. Now you've seen the area. How would you like to stay there for 3 or 4 years? There's no fresh water. Close. You're not going to go take a bath in the Dead Sea maybe once or twice, and that's going to be about it. Your skin's going to be ate off. 115 degrees. It don't rain. Lowest place on the surface of the earth. You're going to stay there with the Roman army for 3 or 4 years, attacking this rock. Okay, so closest water is 26 miles up north in Getty. He had about 25,000 troops there, plus Roman Jewish slaves. You want to get water there, 26 miles away? Think about it. It's tough. Anyway, so 979 zealots up on top of Masada. They can live there for probably 20 years. Rome's not going to tolerate that. So they built a siege ramp with Jewish labor. So imagine if you were a Jew and you're building a ramp where your people up there is going to get conquered. And if you said, I'm not gonna do it, what they would do is put you on a catapult. You know what a catapult is? Put you on a catapult against the side of Masada. What's wrong?
So all the poor Jews that were at Masada saw all that.
Yeah. Okay. This is a picture of the storage rooms. There's 27 of them. They were packed with food, dried goods. And in that environment, the dry stuff, no moisture, it's going to last indefinitely. In fact, when archaeologists got up there and opened some of the stash there, they ate some of the stuff after like 2,000 years. Still good. Okay?
Sure.
So, there is a picture of his palace. Can't really see it, sorry. There's a picture of his palace, a model recreated. There is, about in the middle of Masada, where you've got a mosaic there. Those mosaics are beautiful. Nothing compared to them today. No, Kim did.
I did.
He brought it from,
We weren't allowed to bring
he brought it
that.
from Sephora, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Anyway, to the top right corner, there's stairs going down to a swimming pool. It's about as big as those two. Now, they don't let people there, but it's about as big as those two rooms, down into to the heart of the Masada. This is another picture of mosaics. That picture up there at the top right is Herod's bath. It's short because he was probably a little over, he was probably 5'5", 5'4", something like that. That was the typical height back then. And so that was his bath. Got a little hearth over there to heat the water. Got mosaic tile. And so you get us in. So we sat there and going, boy, I'd hate to be the servant to make sure that water temperature was right. Okay, so there, that triangle shaped is the siege ramp. That's the siege ramp right there. Huge, massive pile of dirt put there by hand by the Jews, slave labor.
For the Romans.
For the
Yeah,
Romans.
they were.
The Roman army was busy building a 7-foot high wall all around Masada, well, on the opposite Dead Sea. It was about 7 foot high, 4 feet wide. Keep the army occupied. Okay, now it's kind of triangle shaped, but back in this day it was flat at the top, or the pinnacle ramp going up. And they made a siege ramp. I don't know if you can tell that siege ramp there. See if this helps. That's the ramp, and there's the tower. Okay? So they got the siege ramp right up to below the thing, and then the Roman soldiers popped out of the tower. There is a picture. We're about halfway up, 2/3 of the way up. You could not put your hand on that handrail. It was too hot. I did that. Put my hand over there and go, whoa! I had gloves too, but it fingers. Okay, that picture there, you can't tell it because of the contrast, but right there, you'll see a round conical shape. And back over there, there's two oil storage bins, whatever. And back over there where the arrow's at is where the Romans built the siege ramp. And then they pulled it out from behind that mountain, and then Masada guys knew that their days were numbered, that they had about 2 or 3 days. That right there is where there was 5 survivors of Masada. Small, young girls. And this is where they buried everybody else. That is Arlington to Israelites. Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, basically, is right there. Okay. I invited Ray, and see what Ray's going to share how the siege ended. And we're standing where the siege, where the ramp came up to. That's where we're at right here. So,
story to conclusion. There's always the question, can you trust Josephus? Increasingly, he's considered to be reliable and accurate in almost all details, but there's always that question. But his story goes like this. The siege began, and they began building the ramp. The Jews believed that they were going to build a ramp all the way up to the top of the wall. Remember, there's a wall 24 feet high all the way around this city. That's about 7 over there, so it would be several times as high as the one where Sarah just went to stand. They thought they were going to build the ramp up to the top of the wall and then fight their way over the wall and in. So they began to prepare their defenses, piling up large stones, having weapons stocked nearby where their defenders up here could protect against an all-out assault on the top of the wall. But the Romans had a different plan. They planned to build the ramp below the top and then create a tower, which Josephus describes as 3 stories high, let's say 30 feet. And that tower then would be pulled up the ramp on pulleys so that the soldiers in the tower and on the tower, some would even be above the wall, but they wouldn't have to build the ramp all the way to the top of the wall. Now, we don't know for sure that that's actually what they did, but it does appear the ramp was designed to be about 20 feet below. So that seems to support that account. He then describes how the defenders shockingly discovered the Roman plan. For one night, as the sentries watched, they saw emerging from behind the hill where the oil tanks are, this gigantic tower, which slowly began. If you watch the movie, they did a fantastic job of capturing that idea, at least, and began to move it toward the ramp. They had designed pulleys, the attachment points which they have found, so that ropes could be brought so that you could pull the ramp up by going away from the mountain. And slowly that ramp reached the bottom of the mountain, and then as they watched, the ropes were attached, and it began its slow ascent. They knew they had a couple of days, at least, because it was going to take that long to get that machine to the top of this ramp. It was moving that slowly. So Josephus says they stripped out of Herod's palace all the timbers. They put a wooden wall behind the outer stone wall made of those huge cedars of Lebanon. It's a casemate wall, so there's one here and one here. So they put another wooden wall here and filled the space between with dirt that they collected from wherever. The Romans got the ramp to the top. It stopped. After time passed, soldiers mounted that tower. Archers were firing back and forth. The Romans had such spectacular archers from Scythia that could hit a target at 300 yards, Josephus says, and they simply drove the defenders back off the wall, and the ram began to beat against the wall. Josephus says it had the effect they intended. The stones soon collapsed, but that wood bent but didn't break. Bent and didn't break. Bent and didn't break. So the Romans had to make a decision. Do we fire that wooden wall? The wind is fickle here, Josephus says. And if the fire is pushed back against the battering ram and that catches on fire, it's going to be months before we can get the timbers from Lebanon here and assemble another one. But if we don't, we'll have to fight our way over the top of the wall. So in the movie, and I love the scene, Silva is so frustrated because he thought he had such a perfect plan, and he finally says, "Burn it!" So they light it on fire. Josephus says at first the wind was in their favor and it was driven back against the ram. They thought for a moment it was going to catch on fire, but then the wind changed. As it usually does, it might not change, but it usually blows east from west, and the fire burned those timbers. The soil began to seep out. The Romans probably fired the inner one. That too burned, and the ram now had opened a hole in the city. Is that the way it happened? Well, at this point, they found many small cinders of cedar wood. So there was some kind of a wooden barrier here that did burn. They also did not find any cedar roof beams in any of Herod's palaces. So it appears that is possibly the case. They also found several thousand arrowheads and ballista stones right in the immediate vicinity. So we know there was a fierce battle. It became clear, Josephus says, that they weren't going to be able to keep the Romans out. So the commander, Eleazar Yair, knowing that tomorrow morning the Romans are going to be in this fortress, assembled his followers in the synagogue or around the synagogue and gave a speech. Now Josephus has it in his account. Didn't have a recorder, I don't think, so always the question. He claims there were 5 servant girls up here, servants, who escaped and were able to give the story, and they brought him the account. I like to read it because it really captures the heart of how the Zealots thought. Brave and loyal followers. Okay. Brave and loyal followers. Long ago, we decided to serve neither the Romans nor anyone other than God himself, who is Lord of all. The time has come to prove this commitment by action. We have never submitted to slavery to one who calls himself God, for it is idolatry. We must not choose it now. We were the first to revolt, and it is our honor to be the last. God has given us this privilege, and we can also have the blessing of dying as free people. They cannot prevent this no matter how desperately they try. Our wives can die unmolested. Our children without knowing the brutal suffering of Roman slavery. Let us do each other a great act of kindness, and our glorious freedom will be our burial shroud. Let us burn our possessions, our food, and our fortress. It will be a bitter blow to the Romans to find they cannot touch us, nor find anything left to loot, the thieves they always are. But let us spare our store of food as a witness, after we are dead, that we perished due to our own decision, and that we chose death before slavery. After all, we were born to die. All of us. Even the luckiest must face this. But slavery in the sight of our wives and children, led away in shame to be used and abused by the brutal Romans, are evils we should never have to face. We will only face them if we are cowards. Is anyone blind enough to see their fury if they capture us? They have always been the most brutally cruel people the world has ever known. Imagine their rage if they catch those who have defeated them in battle at every turn. And then these famous lines that are so portrayed in the movie. You can run, but they will catch you. You can hide, but they will find you. You can fight them, and they will kill you. Or worse, they will capture you and do to you what no one should ever have to experience. While our hands are free and can hold a sword, let them do a noble act of devotion to God. Let us die unenslaved by God's enemies and leave this world as free people, together with our wives and children. Josephus says the group called the Zealots had among them some of the unbelievably tough outfit called the Sicarii, the Dagger Men, the Assassins. They drew lots and chose 10. They found 10 pieces of pottery below in one of the palaces with Jewish names on, including Elazar ben Yair. Those 10 went around and helped other ordinary people kill their wives, their children, and then either commit suicide or the zealot fighters would do it for them. And then at the end, the last of those 10 committed suicide. When they excavated the palace below, they found 3 skeletons, or parts of 3 skeletons. A man about 30, spread eagle, just out of his reach, a dagger. A woman, hair braided, the pictures show the hair looked like it had been combed that morning. And a little child. The movie portrayed that as Elazar and his wife Miriam and his little son Jonathan, if you remember. We don't know that that's the case. In the morning, Josephus says, when the Romans came, it was all silent. And they had their victory. The movie adds an apocryphal bit at the end. We know that after a victory, Romans always made these big public spectacles. So they show the standard bearer of the 10th Legion walking out into the middle of the grounds here, putting that standard in the ground in that Roman voice. In the name of the Senate and the people of Rome, I declare victory! And all the Roman soldiers cheered, of course. And Silva is standing off to the side watching. Victory? What victory? We won a rock in the middle of a desert on the shore of a poisoned sea. Now, how much of that is historically accurate and how much is Josephus's way of glorifying his people, for that was his intent, is impossible to say. But there's enough archaeological evidence to suggest that at least at the core, the story is probably accurate. I'd love to answer questions about that, and I'm willing to do that. My goal here is simply to share that story because it gives you a little bit of an impression of what kind of people the Zealots were. I'm going to spend a whole day with them in Galilee, so I'd rather not get too deeply into the Zealot movement until we get to that day. Question?
Okay. Hope you can see the passion that the Zealots had. Misguided some, yes. But the passion that their God is their God, I'm not going to go to idolatry. We need that same passion.
Not suicide.
Not suicide, not passion.
Because if you look when they were in captivity, God used that to be able to spread the word,
Yeah.
like with Daniel and
Okay,
things.
so with that, why were Jesus and Herod on a world stage together? Well, it's a very simple answer, but very profound. And it is called Val Vomer. And that is where, when you see evil, when evil is as bad and as dark as it is, as in Herod, God is so much better. Okay? Now I'll elaborate that here just a minute. Look at these verses. In him was life. First, John chapter 1. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness. The darkness did not comprehend it. Okay? He delivered us up from the domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of his beloved Son, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. That's the darkness. A lot of times we don't see sin as dark. We know it's wrong and all that, but we don't see the darkness of it. And he is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For in him all the fullness of deity dwells in bodily form. We know that. Do we comprehend how dark is? If you can comprehend how dark is, then you're going to understand how good, much better, good God is. Okay. You got Herod and Jesus. Herod, he was the top of his world. In his own world, he was probably more well known than Caesar because of all his building stuff. He paid an enormous price to get there. Killed everybody around him to save himself. And his title was King of the Jews. He used everybody else to his advantage. He put man on display and he showed the kingdom of man. Versus what Jesus did. Jesus was the top of his world. He was the top Messiah, or a rabbi of his day. 30 years old, other people were 60 years old. Where'd you get your teaching? Okay? Jesus paid an enormous price. He paid with his life. He was also called King of the Jews. He was all alone in death. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Okay? Offered himself up freely. Herod abused everybody. He put God on display, and the kingdom not of man, but of God. So, Herod and Jesus, they were extreme opposites. Not equal, but extreme opposites. They shared many of the same attributes, but completely opposite in their nature. As evil as Herod was, Jesus is so much better than that. Now, like I said, that is Cal Homer. Let me give you an example. We as humans, do we comprehend darkness and evil better than we do goodness? I think we do. I think we can comprehend darkness better than we can with goodness. Let me give you an example of that. Think of the Holocaust. 6 million Jews, 8 million people die. We comprehend that. Tell me where 6 million people were saved and 8 million people were saved. We don't. Can we comprehend 6 million Jews, 8 million people dying in the Holocaust? We can comprehend. We can see the prison camps. We can see all the crematorium. We can see the pictures and all that. You hear the testimony of people that participated in that and that escaped that. We comprehend that. Where's the pictures of people doing good? You see Anne Frank saved, what, a couple hundred? A couple hundred does not compare to the millions. We comprehend evil, darkness, better than we comprehend good. Would you agree?
We have a tendency to sway that
Yeah.
way. Just like in
Okay.
town, if there's an accident or
Okay.
something, everybody wants to gawk at it.
We understand that.
But, yeah, we have a tendency to migrate that way instead of
You got
migrating
Herod
to good.
on the world stage showing how evil, darkness, the nature of man, pretty much to its fullest. Then all of a sudden, the light of the world comes in your back door. We know God's good. We know He's good infinitely, but we have a hard time understanding that. And God is saying, look how bad that guy is. This is how good I am, but infinitely better. In Him was life, and the life was the light of men. And darkness shines, and light shines in the darkness, and darkness did not comprehend it. Darkness can't comprehend the light, the goodness. We, as a people, as human beings, we comprehend evil and darkness better.
think it's what we talk about
Yeah.
now and stuff, the, you know, the things that are going on in the country, we talk and we talk and we talk about that. But is it balanced with like, Jesus is better,
We
God is
will-
better, look at what God's doing, isn't it awesome?
When we say, hey, you know, so-and-so over here, help this one person, those are not single instances. Oh, but you hear about the house fire over here where 10 people got killed, all plus a little baby. Now, I understand that. In our minds, we don't comprehend goodness. And God says, I'm going to help you comprehend that goodness. I'm going to show you how evil, I'm going to allow how evil is to show you how good I am. I don't know if you ever thought that in that perspective. But when you read about, you know, Herod comes across, and his 3 sons that take over, think of how evil they are. The light came into the world much more infinitely better than the darkest dark. That's why Herod and Jesus are on the world stage together. Okay? Any questions or comments?
I think if looking around in this room, we see lots of different things and all, and our eyes are attracted to that. We've got the trees with the lights on it. But sometimes God allows the darkness to come in to where everything's dark and everything's off except that tree, so that we can focus on Him to remember that's the focus, not on the other little things that are around. Because we focus on the wrong things a lot of times and not Him. And I think that's through all the teaching that we're hearing now. That's what it's trying to bring about. Focus on what He is and what He's doing and what He's trying to do in the midst of all the chaos.
When you hear something bad, understand God is so much better than that. Okay?
We have to be careful that we don't just blend in with the darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got to shine bright.
Yes.
We've got to be different right now, more than ever.
If you go to a jewelry shop and say, I want to look at a diamond, they put that diamond against a white background, they put it against a dark background. You put it against dark, but that diamond shows more. We're that diamond, we're that light that's in the darkness. You need the lit, or as the song goes, our little light shine. This little light of mine, let it shine. Okay? Let's close. Father, thank you for you. Thank you for the example that you give. In your, just like your sense of humor, I wouldn't doubt that Herod and Jesus were the same basically spot when you brought the light of the world in to contrast the darkness of the world. Thank you for your verses that say that the light of the world came in and darkness didn't comprehend. But the darkness does not extinguish that light. We need to understand. And Father, when we look at things with the difficulty and all in our life, may we be like those writers in Psalms that sits there and pour out our heart, our situation. But in the end, you're my Redeemer, you're my Masada, you're my stronghold, you're my fortress, you're my deliverer. Father, thank you that as bad as some things can look, you are infinitely better. It's a simple lesson, but it's hard to understand. May we trust you in your precious name. Amen.